Hey everyone, my name is Katie. I teach third grade in the state of Florida, and today I'm bringing you a very highly requested video from my last couple of vlogs of all of the insides and outs of how I make and use my reading slides. All right, so before we jump into actually making the slides, let's talk about slides. I have taught with slides for many years. When I taught in Alabama, I used a Wonders curriculum and I taught first grade and I made my own slides. I kind of had some at the beginning that were adapted from teachers in my grade level that they shared with me, and then I kind of started to make them my own. About the time I started to vlog was the end of my last year of teaching in Alabama, so I think I showed a little bit of my slides there, but I really started to show my whole group slides when I started vlogging my first year in Florida. I was still teaching first grade and I was using like an abridged Wonders program. So we were using Wonders, but not completely. So I shared a lot of my slides then with you guys to show how I was taking pieces from what I was using in Wonders and combining it with what my new district wanted me to do. So I've used slides for a while. Last year, I did not use slides at all because we switched to a new reading curriculum. So my first slide sets that I shared on my channel were from Wonders. And then last year we switched to a MyView curriculum and I switched to third grade. And the reason I didn't use slides last year is because we were trying to navigate a new curriculum and I was trying to navigate a new grade level, and that is very difficult, and making slides is time consuming. I will go ahead and say I think it's very worth it because the time that you put into it is time that you spend getting to know your curriculum and what you're going to teach, so you'll feel better prepared when you plan out your slides, but it does take a lot of time. And as a teacher who was at a new school last year with a new curriculum and a new grade level, I did not have that kind of time to spend on making slides. So this year, our district has kind of reworked how we're using our curriculum, and I decided it was time. I got a couple days up at the beginning, like Labor Day, and then we had some hurricane days, and I spent those days working on slides. And so I'm just going to try to keep it up this year and do the best that I can. So before I jump into showing you my slides, let's talk about programs you can use to make slides. Really, in my opinion, I guess there's like 3 different options. Google, you can use, PowerPoint, you can use, and Canva. Now, I will say I've never used Canva to make slides, so I cannot vouch for that. I use Canva for lots of other things like YouTube graphics and all kinds of things like that, but I've never used it to make slides. So if you've used Canva, you can comment your experience down below and let us know what you think about that. The other 2 options I have used. My favorite way to make slides is Google Slides. That's what I did when I taught in Alabama. We were an all Google school. I just think that Google Drive and Google Suite for education products are super functional, really easy to use. It was so simple to pull up a Google slide on the board, and they can still be downloaded to be a physical copy, although when you download them to be a physical copy, they're not as great as when they're slides online. So I will say that when I left my district and I downloaded a lot of my Google stuff, some of the slides that I had made didn't have the same functionality that they did on Google Slides. But if your district uses Google, that's what I would recommend using because it's so easy to use. Do you hear the airplane or like the helicopter outside right now? Okay, I think it's gone. This year I'm using PowerPoint because the district I currently teach at does not let us use Google Suite products. We have Microsoft, OneDrive, PowerPoint, all of those things. Pros and cons about PowerPoint. PowerPoint is easy to make on your computer when you're in like the PowerPoint application, which I don't have. I actually use Keynote on my Mac, but it transfers pretty well. So that's like a good thing. It's easy to use. Like you've probably learned how to use PowerPoint since you were in elementary school. Very user-friendly. I can still upload it to OneDrive so I can access it from my smartboard at school or my desktop computer at school. The only like big con that I don't really like about PowerPoint is I don't care for opening PowerPoint in like a browser to present because not everything works the same way as if you download it, and fonts don't transfer very well because like PowerPoint Online only has a certain number of fonts available. So my cute fonts that I use don't transfer, so when I open it up on PowerPoint Online, it doesn't look the same. So what I do is I make them on Keynote, export them to PowerPoint, upload them to OneDrive, and then when I get to school, I download them on my smartboard as a PowerPoint file and just save it to my desktop so it's there on the home screen for me to open every day that week, which can be a mess. It kind of sounds like a mess, but now that I have them uploaded, like I don't have to do the first part of that again next year. I just have to download it to my board when I'm ready to use it. So that's kind of the the flow that I use. Okay, another thing that I think is important to go over before we make the slides. I have already done my lesson planning for the slides that I'm going to make. I've shared a lot about how I lesson plan for language arts in Plan With Me videos from this past spring. I will link one of those above in the cards for you if you're interested in how do I plan out a week. I don't make my slides until I've planned out the week, and my district is reworking the curriculum, so I don't use every single piece of the MyView curriculum in my slides. As you're gonna see in a little bit, I kind of pull from different areas to make what I do for Reading Whole Group. And then disclaimer number 2, if you do teach with the MyView curriculum, because I know I have a lot of people on Instagram and on YouTube who follow me who've reached out to me and said, hey, we use this curriculum too, tell me what you think. Go watch one of those planning videos and I'll tell you what I think and how I plan with it. But 2, if you use the MyView program to fidelity, one of the new things they've added this year to their online platform is pre-made slides. And I actually looked at them this past week because they just uploaded the 3rd grade version and they're pretty good. Now, I can't use them because we don't use MyView to fidelity. We use pieces of it to teach our best standard benchmarks here in Florida. So I'm not exactly using the whole curriculum, but if your district does have you use MyView, the curriculum, like that's what you use for reading, you need to go download those slides. So I will put like the directions for how to find them in the description box. I found it on a Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, you should join some MyView Facebook groups because they give you so many good tips. But I'll put the directions that somebody shared for how you can go access those, because if you do, it's really helpful to see like the flow of what they think a whole group lesson should look like using their curriculum. And the slides are like super well made and they're pretty cute, and they have textbook examples, like images from the book on the slide. So they're actually fantastic. I just can't use them because they don't work for how my district is using the curriculum. And I also enjoy like putting time into making the slides my own and making them look the way I want them to look. Okay, so without further ado, I'm gonna turn the camera around and give you a view of my computer. I'll do the best I can. I'm gonna zoom in and try not to get in the way. It's easier than screen recording to just set my camera up and do that, so then I can talk and you can hear me talk and all of those things as we make the slides. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. All right, this is also just a disclaimer from Katie of the future. I've just finished filming and creating all these slides, and I will warn you, it takes a very long time to make them. Not gonna lie, I spent like probably an hour making these slides, but I was pulling resources from a lot of different places. So if you don't want to watch me make the whole slide and you want to just see the final product, fast forward a little bit. If you want to watch and see how I make the slides, go ahead and watch. If you get bored and you're like, okay, I get the gist of it, then fast forward, because I will show you at the end what the full slides look like. Okay, so the first thing I decided I would do is just kind of walk you through a slide set that I already have made so you can kind of see what it looks like. So I always put the unit in the week in the front, and then I put an agenda slide that shows what we're working on during that day. And I do go over this with my students so they kind of have an idea of what we're doing. It takes like 6 seconds to go over. I have my vocabulary slides, and I always make these with GIFs up here. And I use this box on the first day because I introduce the vocabulary one word at a time. So if you escape from it, you can slide that box down. And that's how I reveal the words one at a time, because if you look at the whole slide, there's just so many GIFs, which you'll see later, that I think it could be overwhelming for my students. So on day 1, I always keep the box there. So then we kind of go over our genre for the week, and I get this from my curriculum. We do some kind of example text read aloud, not necessarily from my curriculum, just another engaging topic that I think my kids will love. Like, this is a good informational text that'll be super engaging for them. So we're still practicing the weekly skill just in a fun way. Then we go over our skill of the week, which this week would be text structure. We're talking about problem and solution text structure. So I said, let's review some problems and solutions we've seen in fiction text. These are fiction texts we've already read in our curriculum. So we're talking about problem and solution there. And now we're switching over to how we use that in informational text. I have like an activity that I got from Teachers Pay Teachers that we'll do. So I always put the visual on there. Then our word study skill for that week is the ED ending. So we have like a review of verbs. I won't play the song right now. Then I find slides that have the rules on it, like the ing ending. Oh, I think this is supposed to say ing ending. See, this is a good thing that I'm going through this with you, because that's from the week before. There we go, ing ending. All right, so then I kind of have like the rule, the spelling rule in there, so I can teach that from the slide. And then I incorporate UFly, which I'll talk about later in there, just to give some practice with the skill. And these animations are all done by UFly, which is amazing. And then at the end of each day, I have our independent work, which is just a screenshot of what my independent work looks like. I know that unit's not correct, but I keep the same screenshot, and I build a timer in for just 20 minutes where they work on their word study, vocabulary, and then I pull groups and they can do Choice Center when they're done. Then it's kind of the same thing. Day 2 follows a very similar structure, but the only thing I wanted to show you for day 2 for this like example purpose was here's what the vocabulary slide looks like when you have all the gifts going at once. So this is why I don't do that when I first introduce the words, because that's a lot. And then they're like, oh, look at the polar bear and the squirrels. And I want them to look at one word at a time. But when we review, I let the vocabulary slides look like this. So let me get ready to go. I'm going to pull up my lesson plans, and I'm actually going to do, this is Unit 2 Week 1's slides, and I'm going to work on Unit 1 Week 5. I told you we're not doing MyView to Fidelity, so we're going out of order. So Unit 1 Week 5 would be the week after this, and so that's what I'm going to pull up the lesson plans for and go ahead and plan for. So let me get those lesson plans downloaded so I can show those to you, and then we can make some reading slides. All right, so here's kind of what our lesson planning looks like. We split it up into a 5-day teaching session and you'll kind of see how each day is laid out as we make the slides, but here's like an outline of each day. In this box we put our best standard that we're teaching, and then we also put our example reading response prompt, which is what we would use for students to write a sentence to respond and practice the skill. Our word study pattern, which comes from UFly, and then our words that we're using for our word study test, and then grading options. So this is for my team. They can say these are options you can use from this for classwork grades. Here are the assessment grades that we're using. So I use this every time to make my slides. Okay, so you'll see this a little bit more in detail as we go through this. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. To start, I always duplicate my previous week. All right, so here's what I've got, Unit 2, Week 2 copy, and I go ahead and I rename it right away so I make sure I'm not accidentally editing the old one. In fact, I will close the old one out. If you're curious, this is 2 fonts layered together because I know a lot of people are curious about that. The text is KG blank space solid, and I do one that's like black with an outline, and then I do one where I change the color of the inside of all of them, and that just kind of matches the vibe of my classroom. And then I always have this standard on the first slide. It's mostly for my sake, but also like if somebody came in and was like, hey, what standard are you teaching? I can tell them because it's right there. So here's the standard I'm teaching for this week, is using context clues, figurative language, and let me make that bigger. Use context clues, figurative language, word relationships, reference materials, and or background knowledge to determine the meaning of multiple meaning and unknown word phrases appropriate to grade level. So I'm kind of going with the figurative language because this week we're focusing on descriptive language and using descriptive language to understand a story better. So it kind of goes with the standard, but not exactly. It's part of the standard, like using context clues and looking at figurative language words to figure out the meaning of anything that's unknown and to figure out why they use that word in the text. So now the next thing I'm going to do is change this to be Unit 1, and this needs to be Week 5. And then I have to do that carefully here and make sure that I highlight so it does not change my text color like that. Here we go, Unit 1, Week 5. Slide that back down. Okay, so my cover slide is ready. Woohoo! Okay, day 1, new vocabulary is always day 1. Day 2 is the type of text that we're reading. So I'm going to go back to my lesson plans. The type of text that we're reading this week is a myth. So I'm going to say introduce myths instead of nonfiction texts. So introduce, and I still probably make that, I need this to say introduce. That might make it one line. Yeah, there we go. Introduce myths. Also, these are like little shapes that I entered right here. I just inserted a shape and then typed inside of it, and I made them the same color as the colors here, which you'll see that color scheme is throughout. Okay, then we're going to do our read aloud for the day. Then we're going to start with our skill for the week. So our skill for the week is descriptive language. And then our word study for this week, I need to go back and look and see what it was. I think it was a doozy. It was open versus closed syllables. Woo! All right, so those are the things that we're going to be doing on day 1. Y'all, these slides are going to be tricky to make, but that's okay. All right, now the good news is my vocabulary slide I have pre-made. Okay, so here they are pre-made, and I just inserted all of the words and a picture or a GIF to go with each one. So all I have to do from here is I copy this and I paste this. And then when I click play, all of these little GIFs will play, but if you're just in, and not all of them are GIFs, like this one's not. I try to find GIFs if I can. And then I'm just gonna change the heading so it matches the vibe. So I'll just copy this heading and paste it. Oh, it didn't change it, that's okay. So it's KG blank space solid. And then the color that I always use is I match it with my agenda. Okay. So I'm going to go down a little bit in size because it's been too big on my desktop. And then I delete the blue box and add in the gray. Okay. So that's my vocabulary slide. Then we're going to go to our genre for the week, which is myths. Now, this is where I use my textbook. So Unit 1 student textbook. Here's the MyView textbook. And I go find exactly what they use to introduce the text in the textbook PDF because work smarter, not harder. If it's already there, why not put it in? Okay, so here we go. So this is what it says. Myths are old stories passed along, blah, blah, blah. And I literally copy this and I paste it right there. I change it to be the same font, which I use the font Carlito. I don't know why, that's just the font that it was. And then I make it bigger, so make it like 60. An origin myth, ... Okay, and I even keeps the bold words, which is fantastic. Then I'm gonna put in exactly what was on the textbook page. So here's the anchor chart that they give me on the textbook page. Right there. I screenshot it on my Mac and insert it right here. And I also pay attention to the page number that it's on. So this one is page 177, in case I want my students to go find it. And I don't usually have them go find it in the book because it's right here on the board for them. But I do put that page number there in case. So we're going to do practice read aloud. No, we just do read aloud. And I think what I'm going to read aloud is an example of a myth. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting way to watch it. So I think we'll probably do this, and I'm going to click Insert Media, and it's going to be a web video, and we're going to choose this one, where it says King Midas and the Golden Touch. It's kind of cool. Then let's look at the myth element. So explain something in nature or often includes gods or creatures with powers. Characters might be gods or goddesses. Stories were passed down. Stories help people make sense of something in the natural world that they could not understand. So what I might do after that is like copy and paste this slide and maybe do one slide where we can talk about how do we know this is a myth and what lesson does King Midas learn. So I'm gonna put this in here. Here's my read aloud. It's King Midas and the Golden Touch. Let's animate this. So we're gonna add an effect, make it appear, add an effect, appear, that's order number 2, add an effect, appear, add an effect, appear, and then I'll always just test it. So here's what the slide looks like. How can we tell this is myth? What lesson does King Midas learn? What is the theme? Does this myth remind you of any other story we have read? And it's similar to the chocolate touch. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do to start that day. And now I'm going to save. Okay, I'm trying to decide now, descriptive language, like I do want to go over that, but I might not do it on the first day. Because if I'm going to use an example of a myth, I might do it on the second day, which means I would bump this to being, or I would bump my plans to be, oops, where are my plans? I would potentially bump them to be a 6-day cycle, which I think is totally fine because I want to talk about myths because that's what we're reading, but I also want to do an example of descriptive language. So I think what I'm going to do is come in here and change this. It's always fluid, okay? So we're going to move open versus closed syllables here. And that's also a very good idea too, because open versus closed syllables is going to take a long time to go over as a word study skill, and it's important, so I don't want to run out of time to do it. So we're going to move it right here, and we'll move descriptive language to the next day. All right, slides are fluid, plans change. I want to be able to spend my time wisely. So here we go. Okay, so then what would happen next is this would turn into my word study. So I'm going to move these slides because I don't really want to get rid of them per se, because I might need them in my day 2 when I introduce my skill. But word study is going to be different. So this is open versus closed syllables. All right, so after a lot of searching, this is what I found. And I'm going to save this link for you guys. This is what I had in my old slides when I would teach this. And so I'm going to use this again with a combination of like this, and I need to go look at the UFly stuff. I am team like don't reinvent the wheel, in case you haven't noticed. If somebody's already got a slide to use for it, why not use it? Okay, so here's like, what are syllables, parts of a word. Here's an open syllable. Here are closed syllables. We're talking about open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close. Okay, and then the next thing, whoops, I keep clicking pages and that's not what I really want to do. The next thing that we do is, it's got rapid word charts. So in, so, ob, crow. Ooh, that's kind of fun. Okay, I like these sorts, but I'll probably save these. Label each. Ooh, that is fantastic. Wow, these slides are great. Okay, let me go find out what's happening with UFly here. Okay, I've tried everything and I can't get the UFly website to work. It's sitting down here in Chrome loading. So if it loads, I'll look through their slides too. And that's what I usually use for word study. But for this purposes, since it's not loading right now, we'll just use whatever I've got for word study. Now I would like to open one of the slides that I've already done where we talked about what vowels are, and we reviewed short and long vowel sounds because third graders need that too. So I'm going to copy those 3 slides and move them over here because I think that's important to go over before we jump into open versus closed syllables, because the vowel sounds are helpful for that. So I'll probably like do this and this, and then I'll say like, let's review. Let's review. What is a vowel? Etc., etc. Okay, that looks fine. Good enough. And then here's all the different vowel sounds. Okay, now we're going to go into what are syllables. We'll practice finding syllables and go over open versus closed syllables. That's going to take us like the whole time, probably, for my reading whole group for day 1. So that's where we're going to stop. We'll get right here, and this is where we'll be for independent work. Now I'm trying to think about like what month we're going to be in when I teach this. It's just fun to put different timers in there. Keeps it exciting. So instead of the fall timer, because we have had that one for a while, I'm going to insert web video and put in this Halloween timer. Spooky. Okay, so all of that was day 1. As you can see, day 1 usually takes a very, very long time, and that's okay. Day 2 is where it starts to get a little bit quicker. Review vocabulary. We're going to talk about descriptive language. We're going to do another read aloud. And we'll do probably a written response. And then our word study is open versus closed syllables. Okay, so that's going to be a busy day 2. So anyways, moving along, we're going to review the vocabulary, which I need to copy the new vocabulary slide. Oh, this is Unit 1, Week 5. I forgot to change that earlier. Gets confusing, y'all. Okay, Unit 1, Week 5. Here's the vocabulary. Again, I take the box away. Then I'm going to go over here and change descriptive language right here. So descriptive language is a way that authors can use words, blah, blah, blah. We're going to paste that right here. Delete the witch's hat because totally different vibe in my slides this time. We're going to change this to be descriptive language. Okay, descriptive language is a way that authors can use words to describe what something sounds like, looks like, or feels like. Listen to a fun read aloud and find examples of descriptive language. And instead of fun read aloud, I'm going to say spooky read aloud because that will be more fun. And I'm going to change this to be my Carlito as well. There we go. I've got my slide for descriptive language. The next one's going to be our read aloud slide. Our read aloud is going to be, where did that go? There's so much stuff going on. Creepy carrots. Okay, it's a great book. Okay, and it's really good for descriptive language. It's super fun. Then what I did last year for the descriptive language, so we said we do the read aloud, and then we're going to do a written response. So I'm going to find that. Okay, see, I did a really good job with this last year on these unit review slides. Okay, so here's this, and I'm going to do written response, where all we do is practice finding descriptive language. KG blank space solid. Written response. Use text evidence to describe how Jasper feels in the story. And we'll probably write this on like notebook paper. We'll keep that. Okay. Then we're going to go into word study. So for my word study slides, I usually go back and I copy and paste things from the day before because I'm not about to reinvent the wheel. Okay, so let's do this. This will be word study. Change it up a little bit. Okay, and instead of that, let's go back. We're still going to get let's review. Oh, that's kind of fun. Okay, and there's a lot of them. So let's just do, we're going to do file, download. I'm going to download it as a PowerPoint. You guys, I'm opening another thing. Just so I can copy and paste. Let's review. We're going to practice counting syllables in words. All right, so here's like their content, which is pretty good. They start out with like a visual drill. Okay, so these are pretty good too. So maybe I'll show it in the UFly as well, just a different example of the syllable types, like a different way for the students to see it. Plus, I'm a big fan of the UFly stuff. So instead of this like, well, I don't know. Let's see, how many syllables? This is what it would look like. Closed syllables from the short sounds like hop, kick, fast, short vowel, ends in a consonant. Long vowels, ends with a vowel, it's all long. Okay, then we'll do some reading. And then I'm gonna go back to that slide that I had earlier where it was open versus closed because I thought this was great. Finding like and sorting open versus closed syllables. So we're going to put that in there. Delete this, delete all this old word study stuff. And then we're on to day 2 for their independent work. So I'm going to come back up here. I just copy this, paste it here. It's very important that I keep the day correct on this slide because that way my students are never like, what day am I working on? So it's right there. Okay. So now we're on day 3. We're going to review vocabulary, do descriptive language, talk about our weekly story, which is the golden flower. And then we're going to do word study, which is not ing endings this week. Word study is open versus closed syllables. Syllables. Okay, so you can kind of see how this is very like lesson planning at the same time. All right, delete that. So we need to get our vocabulary slide back. This is the part where I get to reuse a lot of things, and that's super nice. Delete that. Insert this. Okay, now for our weekly story. Well, actually, I said we were going to do descriptive language first. So we want to review descriptive language from day 2. So let's do this right here. We're going to have my little Bitmoji come back as well. Turn and talk with your table to share some descriptive language examples from Creepy Carrots. So we're going to review this, then we're going to do our weekly story, which the weekly story this week is going to be in orange. Our weekly story is The Golden Flower, which I come and get the cover for. And it's on page 179. I have to remember that. 179. And then anytime we read the story, like the first time, we just read the story. And then the next time we come back and read it, we work on our skill with it. Okay, so here we go. The weekly story, then we're going to do word study, which is open versus closed syllables. How many syllables? Okay, and then the next thing that I really loved was like this. Where we're going to do another open versus closed sort. So we probably should do oops. That'll be after we do how many syllables. Open versus closed. And then I kind of want to do this. Maybe we do it twice. Okay, and we'll practice doing that like in some words on our boards. Then we're on independent work day 3. You need to come get that new timer. Y'all. This is a long haul. Okay, day 4, we're gonna start by, okay, day 4 is gonna have to be different because written response. Okay, that's a busy day 4, oh my gosh. All right, so we're gonna review the vocabulary first. Then we're gonna do our weekly story, which is The Golden Flower. So I'm gonna come up here and copy and paste that from my day 3. I wanna change it to be light pink to match the headings. And this time it'll be, as we read, we're going to identify yada, yada, yada. Let me find it. So that's what we're going to be marking. Here's our little descriptive language. Okay, we don't need this anymore. Then the next thing we're going to do is review descriptive language. So we'll want to come here. Do this. We'll do this from The Golden Flower instead of Creepy Carrots. Let's give them a minute to turn and talk about it. And then we're going to want to do a written response, which I don't know if I have one on here. Let me look and see. So we're going to, for the written response is where we use our little template where the students will say blank describes blank. We'll choose one example from the text. They'll write the word in there and then we'll talk about what it describes, and we do that together. After we finish the written response, we're going to go back to our word study practice, which I'm going to need the syllable slide. Let's do another one where we count the number of syllables. Okay, then I want to do another one where we sort the syllables, like this one. 2 more where we find them in words, like we did previously. And then we're going to practice marking some on our board. And that should be the end. Oh, all of that is supposed to be the other color. Okay, that should be the end of day 4. So we're going to get our day 3 slide right here. Put it right here. Change this to say day 4. Okay. So now we're on to day 5. Day 5, we listen to, not Weird Friends, what is it? The Golden Flower. We're going to do our selection quiz, our cold read practice, then our word study is open versus closed syllables. Same thing. Okay, so first we're going to do our selection quiz with the text. So we're going to do our weekly story. Let me find our weekly story again. We listen to it one last time all the way from top to bottom so they get one more exposure to the story. Then we do the selection quiz. And they go in, they find the information, they complete it front and back, they turn it into the turn-in tray. Then we do our cold read practice. I'll come in and find our cold read. I'll screenshot it. Just like that. I'll insert it here. And I add a skinny border around the edge, just so it looks nice. We practice our weekly skill of descriptive language with the cold read. Then we'll do our word study, which is phonemic awareness. Again, I'm gonna delete all of that stuff and come get one more from each of these. So there's one more chance to count syllables. Let's do 2 more of these. And then we're going to do some more of this, or we're just writing them on our board. Okay, this is going to be day 5. We need this. And then this will be day 6. We do our word study dictation quiz. We do our progress checkup and our catch-up time. And this is my slide for all of that gives them testing instructions. Oh my goodness, you guys, I think we did it. So let's go back through and look at the slides, see how they look just from top to bottom, make sure everything looks good. So here's our Unit 1, Week 5, our Day 1. We're going to do our vocabulary. We introduce myths. We do an example of a myth. We talk about how can we tell the story as a myth? What lesson does he learn, or what's the theme to bring in some spiral review? Does this myth remind you of any other story we've read? We read The Chocolate Touch together. Open versus closed syllables. What is a vowel? I probably need to make that the first one. So let's go here. We're going to animate. We're going to change this to be number 1, which means this is 2, this is 3. Let's bring this down a little. Okay, let's try it. Let's review. What's a vowel? What symbols do we use to represent the vowels? 5 short vowel sounds, 5 long vowel sounds. What are syllables? Open syllable, closed syllable. Open, closed. Independent work for day 1. Day 2, we're reviewing vocabulary. We're going over descriptive language. We're going to use a read aloud to introduce descriptive language. We're doing a written response to talk about how they described how Jasper feels and how the carrots felt. Word study, open and close, talking about what are syllables, counting syllables, closed syllable, open syllable. Watch me read these closed and open. Okay, let's read these together. Drag and drop. Let me make sure this drag and drop works too. Yeah, it does. Okay, cool. I love drag and drops. My kids do too, because it gets them engaged. Okay, independent work. Slide. Review vocabulary, descriptive language, weekly story, how many syllables, reviewing the closed versus open syllable, sorting them. Looking at a word, breaking it in syllables, labeling the syllables. That's good. Okay, that was day 4 and day 5. Oh, I think I need to change that, right? No, that's right. Day 5 was the selection quiz and all those things. Cold read, syllables, practice the syllables, day 5, and then day 6. Cool. Okay, y'all, those are the slides I'm saving. All right, you guys, now you can see why making slides is a labor of love. It probably took me about an hour to do those. Now, granted, I was pulling resources from a lot of different places, and I didn't have those places like pulled up and ready to go before I started. Some of them were old slides, some of them were new ones. It was kind of a hodgepodge, which is totally fine. I'm just letting you know, like that's the process that I use to make slides. This one was a little unusual too because I changed my pacing so I could do 2 read alouds, one for our genre and one for our skill. So that made it a little bit different as well. But as you can see, like going through that really helps familiarize me with the material. So when I go to teach Unit 1, Week 5 in my classroom, I'm really gonna know what we're doing because I sat and I poured through and I made the slides, and it's super detailed, helps me know exactly what to do and when, and keeps that whole group time moving. I would love to know what you guys thought was the most interesting, what helped you the most in watching me make the slides or looking through my slides. Tell me what you do in your classroom. I will say also, these are just my slides for reading. I don't really use slides for math. My curriculum does have slides, so I might use like the beginning, but then we go into like the textbook. So reading is like the only time that I use slides, but that is a huge chunk of my day. It's from like 11:10 till 12:30. So that's like an hour and 20-minute block. And this helps me structure that hour and 20 minutes very well. So I'm like managing my time and using it very wisely for my students. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and make sure you subscribe to my channel. Comment below if you have any other questions that are lingering about slides and how I use them in my classroom. I'm gonna try to continue to do this throughout the whole year, but I only have the first 9 weeks of slides done, and the first 9 weeks ends in like 2 weeks or so. So, I mean, I have like the next 3 weeks worth of slides. So hopefully this will last me for a while. I need to do a couple more days, and then like during Thanksgiving break, these are things that I like to do when I'm like in the car, or if I have like spare time, I'll go sit at a coffee shop and work on them because it's kind of fun for me to make them, kind of relaxing, and it makes me a better teacher. And I have to remind myself that like I will have these for as long as we use this curriculum, and then when we stop using the curriculum, it'll be really sad, but it's really helping me be a better teacher. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this was really informative for you because a lot of people have requested to see how I plan my slides. I'm so sorry it was so long, but you wanted to see the process, and so that was the process for filming slides. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.